Thinking about booking an older Royal Caribbean cruise ship? Before you do, here's what I wish someone had told me about them, because there's a lot of things you really should be aware of about a Royal Caribbean cruise on an older ship that really have come to light as I've tried more of the older ships. When I first started cruising with Royal Caribbean, I went with the newer ships, but recently I've been discovering more of the older ships, and I've actually liked them for a lot of different reasons. In fact, I recently went on Enchantment of the Seas, which is a really old ship built back in the 1990s, and I actually enjoyed my cruise a lot more than I thought I would. But from these hidden gems to potential letdowns, I wanted to help you decide if an older ship is right for you. Let's start with number one. Older ships have fewer bells and whistles, but that's not always a bad thing. When you go on an older ship, you don't usually find as many activities or "I can't believe they put this on a cruise ship" features on board. There's no massive water slides, robotic bartenders, or skydiving simulators. This is especially true on Royal Caribbean's Vision class ships as well as its Radiance class ships. On Enchantment of the Seas, there's no water slides. There was only one main pool in addition to the adults only pool, of course. There was no aqua park, and it didn't have a zip line on board. Now, the benefit of all this is that it does provide a more relaxed atmosphere with smaller crowds and, best yet, cheaper prices. People who don't care about flashy attractions and just want a classic cruise experience will be drawn to these type of ships, and that can really be a nice benefit because not everybody wants all those amazing things. While Royal Caribbean certainly advertises plenty of it, and it certainly appeals to a lot of first-time cruisers, if you're a been there, done that person, or simply you just don't care, the good thing about having fewer bells and whistles is it's actually to your benefit. You're going to save some money along the way. Number two thing I wish I knew about older ships is definitely that the cabins may feel smaller and older. Some of the inside and ocean view cabins are noticeably smaller than what you would get on newer ships. And this kind of depends. I found like some of the suites are actually larger on older ships, but for the smaller interior cabins, you're definitely going to feel it. And more often, the motif sticks out the most. Oftentimes when you go on ships that were built pre-2010, they definitely look the part. And you're going to notice that the decor, the artwork, the comforters, the paint choices, even my daughter's favorite, or not so much favorite, are the pink doors on older cabins. She just knows she's on an older ship when the doors are pink. There's no sugarcoating it that this is absolutely a fact of older ships. The thing is, as I mentioned, there are some cabins that stand out as being great choices on an older ship. As an example, look for aft-facing balcony rooms on Radiance class ships. Or if you're looking for a good blend of space and size without breaking the bank, a junior suite is a really good choice, and they tend to be much more spacious. I really like picking out these aft-facing balcony rooms on Voyager class ships and even Freedom class ships, as well as the aforementioned Radiance class. At number three, the shows and entertainment aren't nearly as high-tech or quite frankly up to the same quality as the newer ships out there. When I went on Enchantment of the Seas, I gave the first show on board about 7 minutes before I gave up on it and quickly declared the shows not worth my time on board. The reality is when you go on an older ship, you just don't get those Broadway caliber shows like you do on newer ships. Royal Caribbean's newest ship, like Star of the Seas, has Back to the Future the musical. Icon of the Seas has The Wizard of Oz. Symphony of the Seas has Hairspray, the Broadway musical. These are amazing shows. You're not going to find them on Royal Caribbean's 20 and 30-year-old ships. Friends of mine who maybe not be as much of a show snob as I am would point out that these smaller venues make for a more intimate experience where you can feel a little more connection to the show and the cast members there. And it also serves to being a classic cruise experience that a lot of people do enjoy. That you don't need a plot to a show to have a great evening show. And I would definitely agree with that. If there's good performances, then there are good performances. Plus, the thing though that is an advantage of having what I would call bad shows in the theater is that it provides you more opportunity, or more incentive rather, to go and check out the live entertainment around the ship. Even on Royal Caribbean's older ships, you're going to find some great live bands, piano bars, and theme parties, and these would be way more engaging than large production shows. As an example, the Schooner Bar on Royal Caribbean's Vision class ships, and even the Radiance class ships as well, are really nice. And when I'm on an older ship, I will definitely gravitate towards those places because they are so much better. And without the shows competing with it, if you will, then that's actually an added benefit to get to spend more time there. Number four is the food might surprise you both good and bad, because when you're going on a Royal Caribbean ship, no matter if it's Vision of the Seas or Icon of the Seas, the food quality is supposed to be about the same average. Royal Caribbean really strives for consistency among its food choices. Now, obviously, the big difference, though, are going to be the choices you have to eat. Obviously, you've got the main dining room and you have the Windjammer buffet. You'll find that on every single Royal Caribbean ship, and every single Royal Caribbean cruise ship will have a Chops Grill, which is a specialty restaurant. But that's where it ends, because on an Icon class ship, you're going to have so many more choices of both paid restaurants and complimentary. Whereas on the older, smaller ships, there's not nearly as much variety of dining choices. Not only that, the amount of buffet selections, like the different stations you might have, might also be surprisingly less on a older ship. When I was on Enchantment of the Seas, I was actually surprised there weren't any cooking stations, which is one of my favorite features of the Windjammer buffet, but it wasn't available there. Nonetheless, Enchantment still had Park Cafe over in the Solarium, and you can find Park Cafe on many other Royal Caribbean ships, but I definitely miss things like El Loco Fresh, or having Giovanni's, or Izumi Sushi to be able to enjoy as well. Here's the reality of it. This is definitely a first world problem, because the food on any Royal Caribbean ship, old or small, big or new, is going to be still really good. There's plenty of it, and you're not going to go hungry on any Royal Caribbean cruise you go on. The next thing you might want to know about an older ship is that you might feel more of movement. Now, this is more of a physics class than anything else, but obviously a bigger object, in this case, a Icon class ship, an Oasis class ship, has more mass, and so it requires more energy from the ocean, from the wind, in order to quote unquote move it so that it feels rougher when the oceans are really going on there. Older ships don't have quite the same technology in terms of the stabilizer technologies, so it might be a little more noticeable on an older ship. But I say a little bit more because I don't want to make it seem like if you go on an Oasis class ship, you won't feel movement. You absolutely will, and you can, and I have gotten seasick on some of the bigger, newer ships out there. The difference is, if you go on a smaller ship and you pick a cabin in a bad location, like all the way front, you might notice the sensation of movement a heck of a lot more than that same cabin location on a bigger ship. Now, this goes back to something we talk about all the time, which is that regardless of the ship you're on, pick a cabin that's on an ideal location to avoid those kinds of issues. If you're sailing on really any class ship, you should pick a cabin that's ideally midship on a low deck to minimize the sensation of movement and reduce the risk of feeling seasick. Now, obviously, some cabins are not going to ever be there. Like if you want a suite, they're almost always on a higher deck because that's where the balconies are and that's where they dedicate more space to it. But if you're booking an inside cabin and you want to reduce that possibility, whether you're going on an old ship or not, it's a good idea to book a cabin right in the middle of the deck. Now, I'm going to give you something that you might not think about with an old ship, and that's actually a huge advantage in that there are fewer crowds and the itineraries can be unique. Since ships that are old don't carry like 5,000 or more passengers, older ships feel more personal and are easier to navigate. When you have to go from point A to point B, it's a lot shorter commute than on the big ships out there. Not only that, there's just not as many areas to try to think about. So really, for new cruisers who are trying to figure out how to get around the ship, the approachability of an older ship actually has an advantage. And going on an older ship means some really interesting itineraries. Typically, when you sail on Royal Caribbean's older ships, you're going to have opportunities that the new ships simply can't go to. As an example, Panama Canal sailings, sailings to places in the Adriatic Sea, and even places within the Caribbean are only accessible via the smaller, older ships. So if you're interested in a longer itinerary or a unique one, you're not going to find that with Icon of the Seas. It's going to be just Western and Eastern Caribbean runs to the same 5 or 6 ports every single time. But older ships have that advantage of being able to go to other places around the world. And finally, you might be surprised how many upgrades Royal Caribbean has added to its older ships. Now, you're not going to confuse, a Mariner of the Seas or a Liberty of the Seas with Icon by any stretch of the imagination. However, Royal Caribbean's amplification program, as well as recent upgrades to various ships, have added a lot of new features on board, and there's a surprising amount of cool things to do on board, including eating, activities, and of course, entertainment. As an example, Royal Caribbean just added a new non-smoking casino to Freedom of the Seas on the Royal Promenade. Mariner of the Seas has added a number of different dining venues on board. Even the Radiance class ships have more restaurants like Izumi and more bars like the Pub. What you'll want to do is verify that the ship you're going on before booking has been amplified and look around to see which new features are being added to it. So are Royal Caribbean's older ships right for you? If you've sailed on one, let me know in the comments below your experience and what you wish you knew about sailing on an older Royal Caribbean ship. If this video helped you, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe to get more tips and information when we share them on our new videos. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.